welcome back to the part two of this lesson we talked about earlier concerning the let and const keyword, and a quick refresher of what we discussed in that lesson is particularly this example where we use a try and catch method to catch the reference error so that the page doesn't crash. So the try and catch method that you can see here is nothing special other than a built-in method that you can use in JavaScript, especially when you want to figure out an error about something and prevent the crashing of the page. So, and what that simply means is that if I want this code to run, if I put in the try part without the catch part, the code will not execute, it will not run, and I'm likely not going to get an output as you can see right now on my screen. And so a quick recap of what we did in the last lesson is that we were saying something about having an assignment of value to a name without actually declaring it as a variable can lead to this reference error, and then shows that we are trying to access a variable that has not yet been declared, as we can see in this particular example on the screen. So this example shows the temporary dead zone, which means that variable that are declared with let, they exist in the block, but you can't use them before they are initialized. So even though we have something like this, we have a variable like this that exists in this block, which is this name equals to under. But as it is right now, it's an expression. It's not yet initialized as a variable, and that makes it unusable, which is the description of what the temporary dead zone is in JavaScript. So the try catch block is now used to catch the reference, and so in order for us to be able to get the error that we will get from a step like this, remember that I quickly want to remind us about the fact that we've been talking about scope in JavaScript, and as someone who works with JavaScript, understanding scope of how your variables outside and inside function or outside behave is very important in order to produce mostly correct code most of the time, so that you don't get you don't run into a situation whereby your output is inconsistent with what you expect from your code. So being aware of how variables operate, how your variables outside and inside function or outside other code blocks works in JavaScript will actually make you a better developer and make you better aware of how to deal with each of these variables and work with them in your code. And that is the purpose of why we're talking about this scope, so that as a JavaScript developer, you understand what scoping means in JavaScript, and when you have variables declared in and outside of an expression, you understand what can be done with such variable, how you can use them, what not to do with them, and what you can do with them. And that's the purpose of why we've been trying to show that using let and const keyword does not allow you to make use of that or of variables like that are declared but not initialized, which means that when you just have an expression, as we can see right here, that name equals to under, this is just an expression, this is not initialized yet, because without the use of maybe let or const keyword, it has not become a variable yet. And on the second line, we now try to declare this variable and assign it a different value, and you can see that when we now try to access the error that we should be getting from this our state that we had here, we are seeing this reference error that we cannot access scanning before initialization, which means that we're trying to use this variable before it is being initialized. And so JavaScript, being aware of the scope of this variable and of what we are doing, throws a reference error because of the fact that we're using the let keyword. And the same thing will happen if you try to use a const keyword, as you are going to be seeing. So let me just quickly show us an example using the const keyword. And for the const keyword, I will not be using the try catch method in order to be able to figure it out. So let me just try something. So let me just make the same variable and say, okay, my car name, say the car name now is Fovo. Come to the next line and now say const car name. Now you can see that even before anything, I'm already getting this red squiggly line. Now let me just take this out and then see this way now. Let me inspect and see the error. Now you should be seeing something around uncaught syntax error, and this time it's not giving us a reference error but uncaught syntax error, missing initializer in const declaration, which means that the variable we are trying to use, that we are trying to call, has not been initialized, as you can see. But if I put this out, let me just comment this out, and now let's see what happens. You can see that straight away we are getting the value of this car name. And why we are able to access this car name here is because of the fact that we are not it's because of the fact that giving this expression of car name equals to Fovo has make this to be globally available. If you remember the concept of when we talked about global scope in JavaScript, which is why it is recommended in that video that don't declare variable in this manner in order not to cause issue. Probably maybe a window object or another global object should now override this value, and then you now start wondering what could have gone wrong in your code. So with const as well, you cannot use the variable if it has not been initialized, which means that you will only be able to use this if you have something like this. Now, if I have car name this way and I move it up, I'm still getting this red squiggly line now, which means that when you are using const as a variable keyword, it always must be initialized. Otherwise, it will always throw this error that you can see. But let's say I'm using let. Let's see what changes. So if I change from let to from const to let, you can see that this works. But once it is const still requires that you put a value, initialize that variable at the point of declaration. So if I now change this to what I currently have here and then remove this way, yes, it will work. So this is the way you use const and let when it comes to scoping in JavaScript, and this is very important so that you become aware of the scope of what you are working with in your JavaScript. So JavaScript initialization are not hosted. They only host declaration and not initialization. So when you have a declaration in JavaScript, only the declaration is hosted, which means that only declaration is moved to the top before execution. The values for that declaration stays where they have been declared, which means that if you have this, let me revert back to what we have this way. Now, if you have this in JavaScript, the only thing that JavaScript that gets hoisted is this declaration, which is what we have here. So what that is saying is this. So let's say you have let car name this way. Now, and later you now give this a value and say car name equals to this. Now, the only thing that gets hoisted, the only thing that gets moved to the top is this name, is this declaration, not the value. So this value will stay where it is. Even if I move it away from here and push it down, and then I have something else, maybe I have another thing like say let name equals to Bobby or something. So the only thing that gets moved up according to how hosting work in JavaScript is the declaration and not the value. So the value stays where it is, only the declaration gets hosted, which means only the declaration gets moved to the top of your code block before execution. Thank you, and in the next lesson I'll see you.